In May of 2015, police were called to a residence in Ensley Township, Michigan. A neighbor had grown concerned after not hearing from her friends for 2 days and went to their house only to discover their bodies on the floor. Fire and medical personnel were quick to the scene, but after a quick assessment, determined that there was nothing they could do. It wasn't until a state trooper arrived that anyone went over to the bodies, where they made the shocking discovery that one of them was still alive. Bodies that were found that day belonged to Marty and Glenna Duram, a married couple in their 40s. Marty had succumbed to his injuries after 5 bullets ravaged his body, but his wife, Glenna, was found to be alive even though she had 2 bullet holes in her head. While initially there may have been sympathy and concern felt for Glenna by the authorities, those feelings didn't last long. The day after Marty was found dead, his adult children broke into the home he shared with Glenna to look through the rooms. Whether they were trying to find information about their father, valuable items, or both is unclear. What they did observe is that the home was messy and disorganized, as though items had been flung all over the place. However, they soon discovered something even more alarming. They found letters from Glenna asking her ex-husband to take care of their children, as well as letters to her children asking for forgiveness and telling them that she loved them. To many, these letters read as suicide notes. While Marty's children immediately turned over the letters to police, they did leave something out. They had found $225 in cash in an envelope marked Mount, and $1,200 in an envelope that said Wave Runner on the front. When the omission was discovered later in the investigation, the children said they kept the money because the police hadn't asked. While this was bizarre development, it was only the first of many in a long line of oddities to happen over the next 19 months. As the case unfolded, the police got a look at what seemed to be a particularly troubling relationship. The two of them had been married since 2005, but since Marty had suffered a brain injury from a car incident in the 90s, his health had been poor for years. In 2010, Glenna became Marty's caregiver, and it did not seem to be a role she relished. According to interviews with Marty's family, Glenna would often joke about waiting for her husband to die or how she wanted to kill him so she could take everything he owned. Another relative said Glenna had called Marty a pain in the ass to take care of, and that one day she was going to kill him. While these comments certainly sound disturbing, Marty's daughter said that Marty would hear them and laugh. Sure, couples do dark jokes sometimes, but what if there was truth to what Glenna was saying? Because as soon as police soon found out, she did seem to have a motive for staying with him, even if she was unhappy. Turns out, Glenna Duram had a bit of a gambling problem. It was uncovered that Glenna went to casinos once or twice a week, as well as purchasing lottery tickets, sometimes to the tune of $100 each, up to 4 times a week. This information was gleaned through interviews with Glenna, family members, as well as gas station clerks where Glenna would buy tickets. In the police report, it is stated that in 2010, she gambled $75,000 at casinos alone. But why would her gambling habit keep her with a man she didn't like? Because of Marty's brain injury, she was his caregiver, which meant the state paid her over $3,000 a month to care for him, while he also received $1,100 a month in disability. Glenna was in charge of their finances, and it seems that his disability was fueling her gambling habit. However, the money coming in wasn't enough to feed her appetite, and although Marty didn't know it, the couple was in enormous debt. At the time of the shooting, the couple's house was about to go into foreclosure, with the house auction scheduled to happen on the day of the shooting itself. Marty had been made aware of a notice in the paper that said his house was up for foreclosure, but when he confronted Glenna about it, she assured him that it had been a mistake. When police totaled up the couple's finances, it was found that they only held $500 in cash, as well as being thousands of dollars in debt. While all this information was intriguing, it wasn't enough to convict Glenna. Despite the poor taste and humor, it seemed the two had gotten along, and Glenna insisted to police that if she hadn't wanted to be with her husband, she would have divorced him instead of killing him. As the police continued to gather information about this peculiar couple, they were contacted by a psychic named Fran Phelan, who also happened to be the wife of one of Marty's cousins. Upon meeting with police, she had revealed a notebook where she had jotted down some apparent visions she had surrounding Marty's death. She told police they should look under the couch or love seat of the couple's home, and also informed them that both Marty and Glenna were right-handed, and that their hands played an important role in the investigation. In a bizarre turn of events, the police recovered the murder weapon, a Ruger .6 under the love seat, as well as a clump of hair in Marty's right hand. While police were immediately suspicious as to how Fran had come to know of this private information, they soon determined that she had a solid alibi during the shooting. However, that wasn't the end of Fran's involvement with the case. She insisted on Glenna's innocence and even testified on her behalf. This drove Marty's family, who firmly believed Glenna to be responsible for his death, into a rage. Many of them began to threaten Fran online, and after a probate hearing, an arrow was found at Fran's home with the message, "You're next," on it. While Fran was an interesting part of the investigation, her part slowly faded into the background as the featured player was just waiting to be revealed. Police continued to press Glenna, and she continued to assert her innocence, even after it was shown that she had used her phone to look up information on Ruger, and specifically the Ruger .6, during the early morning on the day that Marty died. A text to Glenna's mother later in the day was sent that simply said, "Love you, sorry." However, despite both these actions seeming suspicious, the police didn't have quite enough yet to convince a jury that Glenna was guilty of killing her husband. Of course, throughout the investigation, police had been meeting with countless friends, family members, and acquaintances, and during those interviews, many of them brought up the name of someone they felt the police might want to interview. That someone's name was Bud, but for months the police ignored the suggestion to interview him. It might seem strange that no one would want to interview someone who knew the victim and suspect personally, but the police had a good reason. Bud was a parrot. Bud is an African gray, an extremely smart and affectionate type of parrot, and he had been Glenna and Marty's pet. Like many parrots, Bud was able to speak and mimic voices, and he was well known for being foul-mouthed and quickly picking up phrases and sentences. While many friends of the family suggested the police interview him, the police dismissed the idea as a joke until several months later. After Marty's death, Bud had been placed into the care of Marty's ex-wife, Christina Keller. They had cared for the parrot together before their divorce, and she was used to the bird and his habits. But shortly after she resumed care for him, she noticed he kept repeating the same words, the same conversation, over and over again. Bud, in voices Christina insists are Glenna and Marty's, repeat a conversation that includes the words, "Get your over here," and then chillingly the words, "Don't shoot." Christina told reporters that Bud would use this conversation at least once a week, and it gave her the chills every time. The video came to attention after the family shared it with a local news station, where it quickly attracted international attention. This was a year after Marty's death. When Christina was asked why she didn't share the video sooner, she didn't have a clear answer, but her reason for sharing it now was clear. The family was furious that Glenna hadn't been arrested, and they wanted to push the case forward. Although the parrot seemed to be a clear witness, he was never actually interviewed by police or put on the stand. Due to the fact that he was, well, a bird, it made the legalities of him testifying rather tricky. However, the video certainly spurred interest in the case, and the police continued to build evidence against the woman they now felt certain had murdered Marty Duram. Over a year after the strange circumstances surrounding the shooting, Glenna Duram was arrested and charged with the murder of her husband. Police never publicly announced what had been the turning point in the investigation, but there were many factors at play. Gambling addiction, crushing debt, Glenna's apparent dislike of Marty, and her search history on the murder weapon were the building blocks for her arrest. And the psychic, testimony from friends and family, and Bud the parrot all had hands in bringing her to justice. Glenna's trial took place in the summer of 2017, 2 years after the murder. It took the jury only 8 hours of deliberation before coming back with a guilty verdict. Glenna was charged with first-degree murder and a felony firearm charge. It was found that she shot her husband 5 times and then tried to turn the gun on herself to commit suicide. She was sentenced to life in prison with no parole. In 2019, Glenna was denied an appeal by the Michigan Court of Appeals. Although Glenna is facing down the rest of her life in prison, so many questions remain. Why did she do it? How did Fran know so much? Is Bud really reciting the last interaction between Glenna and Marty, or was he fed those lines by a TV show or a family member eager to see Glenna take the fall? Due to her injuries, Glenna couldn't be interviewed by police until months after the incident, and at that point she claimed not to remember writing any letters to her children or making any decision to end her life or Marty's. What she did share is that she has bipolar disorder and was suffering from depression. The police never found any evidence that anyone had broken into the couple's home. While we may never know the why, a court has decided that Glenna is the one responsible for Marty's death. While it is a sad ending, hopefully the conviction provided some closure for Marty's family. Glenna Duram is serving her life sentence at Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Pittsfield Charter Township, Michigan. Bud the Parrot is living his best life and will hopefully not witness any more violent crimes. Thanks for watching Beyond Crime. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support more true crime content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below.